Well, guys, All Blacks versus Springboks. Look, guys, in this video, firstly, I'm going to cover off what happened in the match, the first, second half. Then I'm going to have a look at the teams and then ultimately recognise or analyse some key points that I think decided the test match in the end. Look, guys, firstly, I thought it was quite interesting before the game in the interviews. Look, firstly, Rassie Erasmus, he made a key comment. Key factor in the game would be the breakdown. And look, the Springboks were brilliant tonight, weren't they, in the breakdown. And then Razor Ray for the All Blacks, he made a comment that he thought execution was key to the All Blacks, particularly on attack. Look, that first half, wowee. The All Blacks played particularly well in that first 20 minutes, didn't they? Look, they came up on attack, they were physical, they were accurate, they got a number of plays together, didn't they? Ultimately, that partly led to a yellow card to a Fully Fussy, and then a good try at first up to the All Blacks pretty early on. The Springboks responded down the line with a pretty good try from a rolling maul by Bongi Manambi, and then there was a pretty good try again in response by the All Blacks. Bit of an average misread by Jesse Curley. He rushed up but didn't make the tackle when he needed to. If he had held back, I think that probably wouldn't have been a try by the All Blacks. But ultimately, that first half, 12-11, it ended up after the first half. But a number of errors by both teams, particularly a number of careless mistakes by the All Blacks, wasn't there? And ultimately, sort of a number of handling errors and errors further by the Springboks. So, yeah, an interesting sort of result at half-time, and particularly, Beauden Barrett, such the experienced player, particularly, guys, he caught that ball just before 39 minutes 50 before half-time, and then he kicks it out, 5 seconds before half-time, thinking it's half-time. Particularly he should have been far better in an occasion like that. Test match rugby, such fine margins, and a number of the All Blacks players made pretty careless mistakes like that in that first half. The first half, I did note to myself, I just thought 12-11 to the All Blacks. Just thought, this might be a little bit too much for the All Blacks, particularly with the bomb squad to come on, the way the Springboks handled pressure in that last half. It was always going to be a tough ask for the All Blacks. Look, there's a pretty good intercept try by Jordie Barrett shortly after half-time. And then the other thing I thought was interesting was, 44 minutes in, the Springboks brought the bomb squad on. So I just wondered if that was a little bit too early in the match and whether or not fitness would come into play for the Springboks. But look, ultimately it didn't at all. The Springboks were fantastic in that second half, weren't they? Particularly two really key defining moments for me were around about 55 minutes in when the All Blacks, I think they were winning about 27-17 at that point. I said to my wife, look, the All Blacks can score off a rolling maul here and take a lead 34-17 against the Springboks. I think that will give the All Blacks a good chance of winning the game. But look, they just didn't execute. The breakdown let them down again like it did on a number of occasions in the game. And look, ultimately the Springboks went down the other end and there was a yellow card against Ofatunga Fasi and completely dominated that final 20 minutes, didn't they? The Springboks completely dominated. Look, ultimately a 31-27 win to the Springboks. Congratulations to them. Look, they were fantastic over the 80-minute game. Pretty tough pill to swallow for the All Blacks, wouldn't it? I think even as a neutral, I think you'd say the All Blacks did enough to win the game, but the game was pretty much decided in that sort of 55 minute play that they missed, and ultimately the Springboks dominating that final quarter of the match. When I look at the teams, firstly start out for the All Blacks. If you can identify some positives, I actually thought their attack was probably some of the best all season. I thought they played with real clarity on attack, particularly their passing. They were doing the basics well. They were spinning the ball wide. And when they played well, they did test the Springboks out wide. I thought some of their players stood up, particularly Damien McKenzie. I thought his game management was good. His kicking was good. He led the back line pretty well. And look, I thought Jordie Barrett was outstanding. He'll be pretty disappointed in that shed after losing considering, look, how well he played. Look, if he keeps playing like that, look, and at that level, he's certainly developing into a world-class level second five. But look, ultimately, like I said, the game, you've got to really ask some questions about that All Blacks team in that last 20 minutes and what on earth went so horribly, horribly wrong. A couple of players, I think, will be probably very disappointed in that shed, and they'll have to have a big look at themselves. Firstly, Samapini Finau. Look, guys, particularly at Super Rugby level, he's one of those players. He defines, in one of his major strengths is his physicality. And ultimately, it was almost one of the major reasons they brought him into the All Blacks. Yeah, look, one of the first plays, he runs up off a kickoff and he gets run over the top of by a Springbok. I think it was a Springbok locks, maybe that Jason Dixon for the Springboks. I can't remember off the top of my head, but guys, he gave away a pretty simple penalty in the maul. He didn't look up to it in that physicality. It just looked way too much for him in the game, didn't it? Ofatunga Fasi, he's probably another one, brutally disappointed. Look, a pretty poor yellow card under pressure, but, you know, for something that they knew was coming, you know, he should have been better in that maul. And look, ultimately, he didn't make the impact that you'd expect from an All Black off the bench. Look, you looked at Sam Derry, and I did say before this game, it was always going to be a very tough ask for Sam Derry. Look, his lineouts went okay, but again, the physicality just looked way too much for him in the game, didn't it? And particularly, look, key occasion, he ran into contact and a turnover ball off him by the Springboks. Look, it's not Super Rugby anymore. This is Test match rugby. Playing against the Springboks, a whole different beast, isn't it? So he'll be another brutally disappointed, and, you know, players like this, they'll have to be better in the future. But yeah, look, like I said, very disappointing 20 minutes, and that ultimately was the deciding factor in the game, wasn't it, guys? Guys, let me know your thoughts on some of the players and, you know, where you think the game was lost by the All Blacks tonight. Looking at the Springboks, look, they were amazing, weren't they? Look, they faced the pressure in that first half by the All Blacks. They did make a number of unforced errors in that first half, but, you know, they hung in the fight. Their defence is just so hard to crack. They're in your face. And the number of players they had out injured to put a performance out like that, look, yeah, it just shows you why they are the world champions. Key thing, I think they well and truly dominated the breakdown, didn't they, guys? Look, a number of turnovers in key moments of the game, and, you know, the All Blacks didn't get anywhere near the amount of turnovers against the Springboks in return. So they dominated that area, and became pretty hard for the All Blacks to execute their plays. And guys, again, let me know your thoughts on the Springboks team tonight. You know, who played well for the Springboks? A number of players for them, you know, a Fazzy at fullback, and particularly their first five were, you know, so inexperienced, but they were fantastic, didn't they? The confidence they played with, and particularly the Springbok first five. Yeah, I think it was about 10 minutes to go and the game was still in the balance, and he had a kick for the corner, and he could have gone safe. He could have kicked it to the 22, but he went right for the corner, got it 5 metres from the line, and that was crucial, and ultimately resulted in the Springboks getting a try. So they were a number of very good performances by some young talent by the Springboks tonight. But guys, look, Cape Town, here we go for another absolutely brutal test match, and tough week ahead for the All Blacks. They'll have to be much, much better next week, and it'll be interesting to see where the Springboks go from here. Like, will they change their side for next week, or will they give this team another run? Obviously, they were successful, so another week on to build some confidence from a good win for them. But like I said, Cape Town, here we go. Guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and add any further comments you thought about the match, where you think the game was won, who played well, which players need to go and have a look at themselves from the All Blacks, and yeah, which players were good for the Springboks. Cheers.